Hey, what's up guys? Nate here. Welcome back to the channel. Now, ShaperBox from Cableguys is just one of those plugins that manages to find its way into pretty much every single project that I do. It's just such an awesome utility plugin, and then of course you can leverage it to do some pretty incredible creative stuff as well with all of the various modules that are included within it. Now they've just released ShaperBox 3 and I've got my hands on it. I want to take a look at some of the new features. There's some particularly good stuff in here that's very, very handy. Let's dive in and we'll take a look. Right, so I've actually got ShaperBox 3's new interface loaded up here above and ShaperBox 2 at the bottom, so you can just see the differences. They, at first glance, look pretty similar. The sort of overall look is pretty much the same, but you can see that they've really kind of redesigned a lot of the interface here. Which I think is really great. I think it's a lot clearer to understand now. It makes more sense, the placement of stuff, and yeah, some really good decisions, I think, here. I'll run through all the new features. There's a few things here. You can see the section at the top has been redesigned completely. No longer have this section here. Stuff like controlling the sync time now. You don't have to select beat and hertz and stuff like that. It's all just in a single menu here, which is a lot faster and easier to get to. You have these little tabs on the bottom as well, nice quality of life things. If you have a filter, for example, it's just easy to see what you are modulating at any given time. All your tools have moved to the side. One really nice function that they've added in here now is before you had to actually select the select button first before you could actually select any multiple nodes. Now you can actually just, without actually even selecting the select tool, if you select anywhere outside like this, you can actually grab a section and resize and move around as you see fit, which is really, really nice, especially when it comes to trimming clicks, which we'll look at in just a sec. The other additions to the new version 3 is there is a new browser. If we click on this one, you'll see the browser has been overhauled compared to version 2. It's a lot easier now to find your way around if you're just looking for presets, kind of browsing through what's available. It's nicely organized now, quite easy to find various different things, everything from sort of subtle amp sounds and distortion right through to weird pitch stuff going on there, and of course loads of rhythmic chopping, gating, stutters and so forth. There's also the inclusion of a new module called Liquid. So Liquid is a phaser and a flanger section. Obviously you can control the center frequencies with the LFO section here, as well as the feedback. Phaser mode as well, you've got from 4 to 16 stage phaser. Now one other nice feature as well, you'll see with the new modules, you've also got the separated compressor now. Now this used to be housed in the volume section. You don't have to insert a volume now anymore. You can just load the compressor. You could use this just as is, just as a standalone compressor. And of course, remember that this is multi-band. So you've got a multi-band compressor that you can use completely on its own. Now, I want to take a look at the most important feature for me inside of this update, and that's the addition of audio triggers and sidechain, or an external sidechain input. Now, I've been using ShaperBox 2 for quite a while as a sort of sidechaining tool a lot of the time, but it had a couple of limitations. As soon as you start introducing, stuff that isn't 4/4, it becomes a little bit more complicated. You can do that with MIDI triggers. Fortunately, in Bitwig, things work quite differently, so it's really easy to start a MIDI trigger. If you have this on a MIDI track and not an audio channel, the MIDI will kind of flow through the whole audio track, so you don't have to sidechain any additional MIDI signals into this. So that does work, but they've now also added the addition of an audio trigger as well, and of course the external sidechain. So let's take a look. I've got some really basic sounds here that I want to just kind of demonstrate how this works. I actually did switch over to Kickstart a while back as well. I picked this up just as an additional tool to ShaperBox because this actually does have the audio sidechain in it. But there's a couple of issues with this one as well, which are addressed inside of ShaperBox 3. So let's take a look at that now. I've got a kick channel here. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of scale this kick down a little bit to be a little bit tighter. And there's a really nice little shortcut now inside here. When you start a new preset, you've got the sidechain and trim. I have mine actually set to default startup as sidechain. But you can just go trim and it'll bring in a default patch for you here to trim a kick drum. Now in sync mode, you'll hear, if I play this back, that other one is sort of a syncopated note there. It's not a 4/4 kick pattern, and you're losing that kick. So you want to be triggering this previously either by MIDI, but now you can also do that via audio. So we'll trim our kick down a little bit and then sidechain our bass. Again, this easy selection, we can kind of just get a little bit more of that kick in there. That looks good. And let's go and stick a sidechain now on the bass channel. So what I often like to do is to just grab the ShaperBox that we have on the kick and control click that and bring it into our bass channel here. Now what we can do to get a really precise sidechain on this is just right click and go to flip vertical. So now we have the inverse of the kick trim that we have there. Now this is already set to audio, but it's not sidechained to the kick right yet. So you'll hear there's some weird stuff going on here if we play this back. Not really doing what we wanted to do. You can hear it's every now and then triggering on the transient of the bass line. So what we need to do here is to add a sidechain input. So we'll just grab the kick post there, that's fine. Or we could do kick pre-fader, there we go. So now we have the kick sidechained into ShaperBox. We can come down to the bottom here and just turn on the sidechaining. And there we go, we've got a really tight sidechain happening now. Nice little feature as well is you can actually show and visualize the external sidechain input. So you can kind of get an idea of what's happening at that crossover point where the bass line comes in. Of course, you could do this in multiband. These 6 dB filters are actually fine. You're not going to get too much phasing if you want to get something a little bit less obvious. You can even just copy this wave, paste it in here, and then adjust the volume for this one. If you want to kind of just smooth things out, you're not getting as much ducking in the highs. Let's just go back to this one again. Now, one of the issues that I had with Kickstart is, for example, if I added in a filter here, and at some point in the track I wanted to add in a high pass filter. Now there's no real reason to be ducking out the subs at that point, but the problem with Kickstart is there's no way of actually filtering your sidechain input. So even when you are high passing a kick like this, there's still the peak of the kick which is going to be triggering the sidechain all the time, like it's doing right now. Now the way you can get around that is if you come down to the bottom here, you've actually got pretty comprehensive settings for the sidechain itself. If we click the sidechain settings, play this back now, gives you a really nice sort of representation of what's happening. You've got threshold controls. Now there's no sidechain happening at all. Little kick in there. But what I can do now is actually use the input filter to make sure that we only want to sidechain stuff when there's competing frequencies. So for example, we'll just take everything that's sort of below 130 Hertz, for example, here. And now I'll play that back. You'll see there's no sidechain occurring at all because the tops of the kick have been filtered out in the sidechain circuit there. As soon as we drop that filter off, we're now getting our sidechain back again. That's really cool to have. I mean, this kind of thing would normally only work if you are sidechaining traditionally with a compressor, which I should add you can actually do in ShaperBox 3. You can even combine a sort of very clinical sidechain with a slightly more sort of standard compressor sidechain as well, just by closing this down, bringing in the compressor, and you can actually sidechain input to the compressor as well. So if we bring down our threshold here, and let's say we're using the volume shaper to kind of do that very clinical cut there, we can extend our release time and get a slightly more gentle pumping kind of feel to this now. using the compressor instead of the volume shaper, or actually combining both of them at the same time. Now, there's a couple other little things that you should know here. You'll see you can have this in a loop mode. It will re-trigger when the audio signal comes in, but it will continue to loop. If you turn the loop mode off, you actually have the sustain section here now. So wherever you leave the sustain, you see how soft the bass is now, because it will basically re-trigger, run up until this point, and then hold it straight for the rest of the cycle. So this comes in handy when, let's say, for instance, if you want to get really kind of finicky with your kick, we could do something like, let's set this to eighth notes instead. Or even, you could even do 16ths here, but let's take a look at this. You can see the kick is way too short now, so we're going to need to move this over to about here. So this is going to be our 16th section, and this will be the rest. So we can cut the kick off there. And now we can actually even go and do things like removing specific harmonics or frequencies from the kick, for example. If we do something like this, and then use our selection tools. It gives you quite a nice low feeling to that kick, taking out some of the punch there. Now, the problem with this, in some cases, if you were running this in a loop, might actually double back on the kick and cut this out later on as well. And that's where that sustain thing comes in handy, is you can actually just make sure that once this runs its course, it'll hold it at 0 the whole time until it re-triggers once again. Now let's take a look at some other things that you can do with this, because this really kind of opens up a lot of doors for you as far as processing. I want to take a look quickly at this, for example. Now, the sidechain doesn't have to be sidechain to another channel. You can use this just as an internal sidechain. So without routing the kick into this or whatever, we can do little edits. Let's say we want to add in a filter. And we can do some sort of gating and stuff to kind of really tighten up this. So let's go down with this. So we're just getting that little transient with the filter there. Now what we can do is we can actually switch this back into audio mode. Now we're using the internal sidechain. We're not going to sidechain this to the kick or anything. So let's open up our audio trigger settings. So from here you can kind of decide how much detail you want. Of course you can filter this, so let's say if we just wanted to use the hats to trigger that. We could decide we just want the kicks to trigger that. So you can see a lot of flexibility going on here. Now, sidechaining it to other channels, it's a really good way to kind of impart the characteristics of other tracks in your project into other sounds. So you can use this almost like a vocoder now too. If we'll use our drum loop, for example, let's maybe just let's apply some sort of gating to this. So we'll do the inverse of this, put this vertically. So we've got a really nice tight loop now. Open this up again, maybe just increase the detail slightly. Right, so let's take this pad sound that I have here. And let's insert a ShaperBox 3 into this one too. And now we can kind of start doing some sort of almost vocoder-y kind of effects here. Let's take the filter again, for example. And we'll sidechain our break into the ShaperBox 3 on our pad sound. And we can just do something simple again here. Set this to audio trigger now and take a listen to what we get. And enable the sidechain. So we're kind of getting that rhythm now from the trance into the drum break into this pad sound. There's another way you can do this now as well. If we just sort of disable the LFO section here, bring in the envelope shaper. You'll notice that our envelope shaper now can also be linked to the sidechain input, the external input that we have. So let's enable the sidechain there. We'll bring in the sidechain from the break. Adjust our threshold here. And we're going down with this now. Let's decide we go up rather. And the cool thing with this is that you can actually apply multiple different effects, and they don't all have to follow the sidechain. So we could go in here and let's add some noise to this one, for example. You can add that from the sidechain too. And the cool thing with this is typically the noise would follow the input from the channel that this is on. If we disable our filter, you'll hear that the noise is actually being added according to the drum break now. And like I said, you don't have to be using the sidechain across all of the modules. They can be running with separate trigger modes. So if we go and use the time, we could just have this set to sync, this one running off the envelope generator, this one running off maybe this audio sidechain here. And we can go and edit this now and do some stuttery stuff going on here. And this one will just be syncing to the project tempo now. And let's go with the new liquid one. Just really long with that one. So there you go, a really cool way to kind of just impart different aspects of your mix into other parts of the track. I really like this thing just for adding subtle movement. You know, even something like the width or panning can give you some really interesting results, less obvious than what we're doing here. But again, with that pad, for example, let's say something like, let's actually disable this one. I'll bring in a new shape box. And I'm just going to sidechain this one on the pad to our kick instead. And we'll forget about the volume shaping for now, but something like the pan, for example. Now again, you can use the audio trigger to get the panner to kick in and do various different movements with the pads according to the rhythm of the kick now. We'll go audio, sidechain input. So subtle, but those subtleties often really make a sound, and I like that movement now of it following the kick. And it's something that should be a bit of a pain to do if you were doing this inside of automation. Now, you may be wondering as well, if you're in Bitwig, this concept of being able to sidechain anything has been there for quite a while. You can just open up your modulators and bring in a audio sidechain module and basically modulate anything you want. Now, this is true, but the one thing that ShaperBox does a hell of a lot better than Bitwig is the envelopes. Now, Bitwig is sorely lacking when it comes to a multi-stage envelope like you have inside of ShaperBox 3. The closest you're going to get to that is the 4-stage, which to me it really is it's just not well thought out, and you can't do sort of complex gated patterns and stuff here like this, whereas in ShaperBox you could be re-triggering something complex like this, for example. Let's maybe put that on something a little bit more apparent. Let's go with just the filter again, I guess. Again, audio sidechain in, go with something creative like this. So yeah, just the ability to draw in these complex envelopes is just way easier and way better inside of ShaperBox, so I do like it for that. And yeah, there's nothing stopping you from, for example, combining the two systems and going with an LFO here, and maybe assigning that to something that can't be modulated with the envelopes inside of ShaperBox 3. We'll just go with the stereo, come back to the controls and modulate the stereo offset for the filter. So yeah, the combination of the two of them works really well. So yeah, that pretty much covers most of the new features. I think it's a really cool update. I mean, I would purchase this solely for the audio sidechain that's been added to this. It really kind of opens the door to a lot of powerful usage cases with this, and yeah, it just super, especially for things like sidechaining. It's just so accurate and so precise. It really is a cool tool to have. And I do think out of most of the stuff on the market there, this one is kind of just the best bang for your buck, what you're getting here. Lastly, like, we'll just stick a ShaperBox on the master, and let's just take a look at some of the presets as well. Go through the new browser, and let's say we want to look at some of the more stutter repeat stuff. Some of the new presets. So a lot of these using the audio triggers now. Pretty cool. Yeah, so there you go, ShaperBox 3. If you're a ShaperBox 2 user, no-brainer, just go pick this up. The sidechaining features are amazing in this. If you haven't used ShaperBox before, do go check this out. It's a really amazing plugin. Probably out of all of these sort of volume shaper plugins, it's absolutely my favorite. I think it's a great plugin. Super useful in so many different cases, and you get a lot of bang for your buck with all the different modules thrown in the whole bundle. Cool. I'll catch you guys soon. Yeah. Till then, take care. See you soon.